Hey. All right. This is Lee's Listening, episode 8. And it's taken me a little while to get back. I think it's been like 2 weeks now. But I was sick, and then, I don't know. I just want to make sure that I get in the good headspace to do the podcast. And, I don't have too many other things going on. I like it to be, relaxing. So it took me a minute to get back. Been a little busy. But this episode, I'm just going to talk about what I've been listening to recently, and also watching a couple things. Stand-up comedy I'll get to, but the first couple things are music-related, but they're more of a Lee's watching instead of Lee's listening. But first one, gotta start it off. Machel Montano on NPR's Tiny Desk concert. The first Trini artist, the first Soca artist to be on NPR's Tiny Desk concert. If you're not familiar with Tiny Desk concerts, they're NPR sponsored or whatever, and they play at a tiny desk, and it's like more of an intimate setting for bands to perform their music. And usually the sound quality is really good too, which is what's nice about it. There's no crowd noise or any, production noise. It's very crisp, good sounding because it's radio quality. So anyways, I've been watching Tiny Desk concerts for over 10 years or something. I don't even know how long they've been doing it. It's awesome, and I love a lot of them, but this one was so much fun. First Trini artist, first Soca artist, and yeah, this was such a good representation of Trinidad and Soca music. It was so much fun. He had the crowd, which is very typically boring. Tiny Desk concerts usually kind of quiet, and they're just kind of standing watching. But he had the typically boring crowd of Tiny Desk up and dancing and having a blast, because the energy is contagious and undeniable. It gets in your soul, and you can't help but feel good. Soca music does that to you. And he did, I think, 6 of his popular bangers. Like a Boss was awesome. He had everybody going. The band was so good too. The bass player and horns were ripping the whole time. Percussion was ripping. Yeah, this was amazing. If you're not familiar with Soca music, this would be a good introduction, I think. So I think he nailed it, and that's got to be my first thing I talk about this week, because it had me so hyped. I loved it. Machel Montano on Tiny Desk concert. Be a link in the description. And so another thing I watched that's music related was I had gone and seen a Complete Unknown, the movie, the biopic of Bob Dylan. So, and I went with Uncle Dan. Shout out to Uncle Dan. And I thought Timothy Chalamet killed it as Bob Dylan. I think I was very impressed that he learned all those songs and performed them himself in the movie. So if you don't know that, he sings it, he plays the harmonica, he plays the guitar. It's awesome that he was able to do that. Also, the actress that played Joan Baez was really good and sings the songs herself too, which is not easy because Joan Baez is a great singer, significantly better than Bob Dylan. I mean, Bob Dylan's, not the greatest singer out there. Joan Baez is actually like a beautiful trained vocalist that you can hear in her music. That was impressive too. I thought the song choices for the movie were really good. Loved hearing A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. I love that song. Masters of War, also one of my favorites from Bob Dylan. And he does a song for Woody Guthrie, too, which is interesting, because I didn't realize that he was friends with Woody Guthrie. And that's kind of how he got into the folk scene with him and Pete Seeger. And the movie shows that, though it's not quite accurate to history, I guess, but more or less, whatever. And also Johnny Cash and him were pen pals. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that. So learned a couple things, couple connections that Bob had that I didn't realize. I also learned some cool stuff throughout it as well. I didn't realize the relationship that he had with Joan Baez. I guess I didn't know that much about Bob Dylan's early life. I will say, if you are a giant Dylan fan and you do know the history, this movie might annoy you because the plot line apparently is a little different than history, and I just kind of expect that from biopics. Like they typically do that, and they have to work in the big songs too, and they kind of fabricate how those songs came to be and how they were written. And I just expect that, so I'm cool with it. But if you're a diehard Bob Dylan fan, it might the plot line might piss you off a little bit. But I thought the music was great. Thought the performances were great. Timothy might get an Oscar for that shit, man. That was pretty good. And so with that, I've been listening to Bob Dylan after that too. It got me like interested in listening to him again, which I've always listened to him, but it kind of revitalized that. And I, was listening to Freewheelin, Bob Dylan, and Highway 61 Revisited, the two albums that the movie kind of centers around, because it is about him going electric from the folk music into the more electric rock sound, and that's like a big thing. The folk community's all upset with him, so that was part of the movie. So I kind of was listening to the albums that the movie centered around. So I'm gonna put the links for those couple albums. But I mean, if you don't know Bob Dylan already, like I shouldn't even have to give you links, but that's okay. I'll give you the two main ones I've been listening to. And while I'm talking about older music, I also dove back in time to Lyle Lovett's album Pontiac, because I was hanging out with my Uncle Wes. Shout out to Uncle Wes. And, him and my parents are big Lyle Lovett fans. And so he kind of reminded me, I need to go back and listen to that stuff. Lyle Lovett was around like late 80s and early 90s. And, he carried on through, too. He's still playing and everything. But that's when he kind of peaked, I guess. And Lyle Lovett has a folk country sound. He has a voice that is not country, though. He sounds like he could do Billy Joel style music with his voice, like if he wanted to, but he instead uses a more folk country background to his music. And really good lyricist. If I Had a Boat is the first song on the album, and a really nice song. He has a nice song about his wife as well on here, on She's No Lady. And there's some more upbeat honky-tonk country sounds and more laid-back folk songs as well, which I like those. Great album, and good to put on during dinner with the folks. And again, like I said, my parents and my Uncle Wes are really big fans of Lyle Lovett, so shout out to them on this one. And this album, specific one, is called Pontiac, but it has been recommended to me from Wes to just put on the This Is Lyle Lovett one too. But I thought this album was really good all the way through. All right, so back to newer music. I've been playing Kelly Finnigan a bunch. Kelly Finnigan I mentioned during my recommendations episode because Josh had recommended his Christmas album to me, and I thought that was really good, so I talked about that one. And I thought that was so good that I went back to his 2024 release to hear his real music, not just Christmas. I mean, Christmas music's real too, okay. But I meant his regular albums. And so his stuff is great. His music is amazing. So I went back to his 2024 album and the collaboration album with the Monophonics, also really cool. So I'm going to put links to both of those because both of those are good. And this is just great soul music. It is like Sam and Dave meets Marvin Gaye, but with a more modern sound. So kind of like Black Pumas, I would relate it to. But funkier and groovier, I would say, than Black Pumas. Black Pumas is a little more like rock, I guess. But great instrumentation and vocals. And you can play this anytime. It is just good and groovy, fun vibes. This will be playing a bunch because it is accessible and great for social gatherings. Like I think anybody would like this music. It's just so you could play it wherever, whenever. That's a benefit to it as well. So this is Kelly Finnigan, a couple albums by him. The 2024, I don't remember the name of him. I think it was A Lover Was Born or something. And then the Monophonics album as well is really cool. He has like a bit different production on that one, which is cool. All right. I'm doing this one in the morning, so I'm having coffee. Sometimes I do it at night with a cocktail. But this I'm doing in the morning with some coffee. Just had to take a sip. Excuse me. All right, I'm going into hip-hop realm for the next few recommendations. And I got to talk about Village Boy EP by Bunduke, my buddy. I mentioned about him before in my first episode. This is my college buddy. I call him Duke. He goes by Bunduke. And I talked about him in my first episode and the fact that he was on the Netflix competition show Rhythm and Flow, which is more or less American Idol, but for rappers. And Duke was great on there. Oh, man. He did great during the freestyle session, too, where they were given 24 hours to write lyrics about a specific person that is named prior. They know who they're battling, which is not a real-world example of a freestyle cipher or battle, in my opinion. But so he had written some lines, but he was the only one to actually freestyle off the dome instead of having all of it written, which he got shit for from the judges, which I just it bothered me so bad because I was like, he freestyled this. That's an actual freestyle. And one of them was Eminem. One of the judges was Eminem, who he should know what a freestyle should be. How is it a knock to freestyle a response to something his opponent said? It was actually a response to something his opponent said right off the top of his head. To me, that would be a plus and is more impressive. I thought that was ridiculous that the judges made that a negative. I don't even know how that's... And Eminem should know better. I don't even know how that's a negative thing. Ugh, God. Sorry. I'm getting fired up because I just... In general, I disagreed with the judges on a lot in the show. So I'm not necessarily vouching for the show. I'm just really proud of my buddy Duke for being on that show, and he killed it. He represented his South Sudanese culture well, talking about his refugee parents and also rapping in Arabic, too, the language of South Sudan, which the judges did think was cool, and they gave him props for that, which was awesome, too. And he sounded great. His performances on there were awesome. Really proud of him for that, even though the show didn't do it for me. But so he timed the release of this new EP with the release of the show so that after getting the extra recognition, people have some new music to check out from him. And it's fantastic. His voice is as smooth as ever. Great catchy hooks. Like the song Chief was stuck in my head for days. And I think my wife's head too. She was singing it around the house too. Also, the ugh on 100 racks is so good. Oh my God. All I wanted was 100 racks. Ugh. He just comes in. It's nasty. It's a nasty ugh, and I love that. So listen for that on 100 racks. And as always, great, meaningful lyrics and bars. Bars as always. If you listen, he's always got clever lines in there. It's so good. He also raps in Arabic, as it is the language of South Sudan, as I mentioned. So, like, he transitions back and forth between English and Arabic on a couple songs, which is so cool and unique. I don't think I've ever heard that. Great production as well. I think Random Word, I believe, did quite a bit of the production, but I'd have to ask him about that. But, shout out to Random Word. He's always done cool stuff, too. With a variety of different sounding beats. There's soul beats. There's kind of a more trap beat on there. Variety of beats. And this is so good and accessible. I think everyone can like this. Like, he's talking about meaningful stuff. He's a good dude. And, it's not, it's mostly clean too, which is like good for some people. And my wife said this is her top hip hop project of 2024. So, and, so that says a lot too. And I love this album, this EP. Sorry, it's an EP, and it's only 10 minutes. So go put this on and support my buddy. Do you not have 10 minutes? If you don't, I hope you find it. No. Anyways, I'm so proud of my buddy Bunduke. Check out this EP called Village Boy. It's so good. Shout out to him. All right, now I got to talk about probably the most popular hip hop album release of this week. Just came out last Friday. So it's Balloonerism by Mac Miller. It's a second posthumous album that's been released. I loved the first one, Circles, which was like kind of a second part to swimming, swimming in circles, essentially. So, and that was he was working on when he passed. This one is actually an album he was working on in 2013, 2014 era, which had albums like Watching Movies with the Sound Off and Good AM were the ones that came around. I think Faces came out around that time too. which I'm just gonna put out there that I think he released the better albums. This one is cool, but it isn't as good as those, and so I could see how this one kind of got put to the side, as it might not have been completely finished. But it is impressive. He was working on this much different material, much different stuff during a just 2 year span of time. Like the production on this doesn't sound like the rest of the albums that came out during that time. So it is impressive that he was making this album during that time. And I will say that the album feels like you're floating away in a balloon throughout it. I mean, the album's called Balloonerism. I think that concept really gets through on this, or the feeling of floating in general. And the production is definitely cool and unique. It takes a while to get going, but I like Do You Have a Destination? Definitely that balloon floating on that one. And Friendly Hallucinations also is really groovy and spacey and kind of has that concept and feel to it as well. And then $5 Pony Ride is really dope with Thundercat on bass, which I think Thundercat's elsewhere on this album too. And if you don't know Thundercat, go listen to him. He is such a good bass player, and he gives a sweet bass line on this one. Spoiler, I will eventually put out my top 20 bass players list. And spoiler, Thundercat will be on it for sure. So that 3-song run right there is probably what I'm going back to most, if I'm being honest, especially $5 Pony Ride. But Do You Have a Destination, $5 Pony Ride, and Friendly Hallucinations, that's a great 3-song run that I will go back to those. And I will go back to my favorite song on this album, which just Funny Papers. I loved that. I liked the concept and storytelling of it. He tells the story of a few different people just that he read in the Funny Papers about these people having, struggles in their life. And I like the nice piano vibe to it. And Excelsior is cool conceptually. He's reminiscing on his childhood on the playground and how there wasn't much to worry about. He says something about, my worries were like that I don't like Brussels sprouts and broccoli or something. And it was just cool, that concept of like, these are the things we used to worry about. Like Jane is worried about this and Bobby's worried about that. And now we have so many bigger things. And it was just funny how back then it was such smaller things that we cared about. And so I just like the concept of Excelsior too. That was cool. I like how it built up. And I can hear him getting to the groovier, mellow sound that he incorporates later in his music. I can hear him starting to experiment with that and get into that. Generally on this album, lyrically, he's talking about similar stuff as the albums around that time. So nothing too new lyrically. There are some good verses on this, though. Really, some good verses. Maybe some could have used some polishing. Like, I would say, like, Shangri-La, to me, was pretty bad. And production in general, that song could just go. I don't need that song. And also Transformations can go too, probably. But overall, the verses were pretty good. And I like that he's very introspective, honest, and vulnerable, as always. He's really putting his feelings out there and, like, talking about his issues. And the overall vibe of this album is really nice. It is very chill, but it doesn't pick up much or change vibe too much. And so I do have a few negatives. And the negatives are that it is pretty slow and drab, especially on the latter part of the album. It's vibey, but it just never picks up or captures your attention that much. I also think the hooks are a little too long, and I felt like some of the songs just dragged on during sections of the song, and some of the hooks just didn't do it for me and kind of dragged on and felt a little basic or maybe not completed. I don't know. Like the hook on Deborah Downer, it was just kind of annoying to me, to be honest. But the vibe of that song is cool. I do like that song, but and I will say that I did find it better with headphones and the right setting. Like driving to work is not the right setting for this. Go sit outside with a drink or whatever you're into that'll chill you out to kind of identify more with the music, I'd say. This album grew on me, though, and with the right setting, I would put this back on, or for chill mornings. I ended up liking this for the most part, but not as much variety as his other albums. I wouldn't rank it too high on my top of his list because there are quite a few skips in my opinion. But I like the vibe, and there's definitely songs I'm coming back to. So yeah, that was all about Balloonerism, Mac Miller. All right, next hip hop album is from Ka, and the title of it is "A Thief Next to Jesus." And so this is, I decided to talk about this one next because it's kind of interesting. This album came out right before Ka passed away, so it's not a posthumous album, but he passed away right after. And something else that's interesting, it's unrelated to how he died, but he was a firefighter the majority of his life, and he was actually a 9/11 firefighter. He was one of the ones on the ground there because he worked in New York, and he's from Brooklyn as well. So that's a part of his personality as well. He's kind of a dark guy. Ka has a really extremely laid back style, and his flow is more like spoken word. So I'm going to admit that some people are going to find it boring. And also the beats are pretty abstract and sometimes aren't even really beats. They could be just a soul sample. The beats are really cool and jazzy though. I really love the jazzy aspect. And you know, you can even get choir sounds in there, like on the song Such Devotion. But it is really all about the lyrics with Ka. And he is really prolific and says some really good stuff. I will admit his delivery makes it a little hard for me to keep attention on all the lyrics, I will say. So it does help to read the lyrics along with him rapping, and it is really worth it to read them because he is saying some amazing things and crazy rhyme schemes. I mean, this is bars on bars on bars. It's incredible. And he gets conceptual on quite a few of his albums too, like the album Descendants of Cain, where he's using the story of Cain and Abel and relating it to the way that people kill each other these days, like essentially killing their brothers, like specifically where he is from in Brooklyn, and the community and scene that he saw around him growing up and stuff. So that's another album I like by him, Descendants of Cain. Also, Honor Killed the Samurai is really cool, kind of conceptual about that mindset, a samurai's mindset. But like Descendants of Cain on this new one, he is rapping with religion as a theme, but this one is kind of about him losing faith in the church, I would say specifically, not necessarily in God or the message of religion, but in the church's morality and people not using those teachings and values in their lives. He says in there, ain't nothing shook about me but my faith. And Him and I is probably my favorite. So many great lines on that one. But yeah, Ka is a really deep guy. I had to talk about this album. This one might be a tough one for a lot of people because it's slower, but if you really get into the lyrics, it's really good. And especially, if you're religious, you might find some references there that you think are cool. And he just says a lot of good stuff about being a good person on this. It's great. But it is pretty evident that he was depressed and saddened by the world and how people treat each other and the powers that be taking advantage of people. So it's pretty deep, dark stuff. But I love it. Yeah, that's The Thief Next to Jesus by Ka. Really incredible album. All right, next album is Love and Service by Brother Ali. And this almost made my top list of 2024. But I just didn't go back to it enough for whatever reason. But this is an amazing album, hip-hop album. We're still in the hip-hop realm. And something about Brother Ali that's interesting is he's albino. So he talks about being judged and made fun of for his pigmentation, which is a common theme in rap music, typically about being black, though. So this is kind of interesting that it's a similar perspective, but it's also kind of a unique perspective because he's albino. So that's kind of interesting about him, and he talks about that stuff more in his early music. So not really on this album, but he's been around for a while. The first album I heard by him was in 2011. with the album Us. And then I really like the album All the Beauty in This Whole World is really awesome. And a clean album as well. So if you got kids, you can play this around them, and it's great. And it's always very meaningful stuff, content with this powerful, provocative voice that almost sounds like a motivational speaker or or maybe even a preacher or something like that. So if you don't like that kind of like preachy flow, maybe you don't like it, but I love it. I think he sounds great, and he's a good person, and you can feel the passion and compassion for humanity that he has in his delivery and lyrics. This album, he has teamed up with producer unJUST, and great, cool production, soulful kind of beats, my kind of production. Lyrics about meaningful things and world injustices and commentary, while also having very impressive rhyme schemes. I mean, the way he's able to put so many of the same rhyme sounds together and still tell a very profound message. It's incredible. He's really on another level. Like tracks Awaken and The Collapse are a couple of my favorites. The Collapse is amazing. He's talking about the powers that be take advantage of the people and starting wars in the name of divinity. And I love what he says so much that I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to read a part of this verse, and I'm going to try to kind of do it in a flow that, it sounds like the song a little bit. But, all right, so he says, "You see the tyrants buckle when their lies start to crumble. The high turn humble when their empire tumble. The bone-chilling condition war criminal villain. Their pronouns are pronounced as chosen and victim. The bombs in the billions to rain on the children. The Holy Land built on mass graves you're filling. The poets and the singers got stories in their spirit. Owners in the business oppose it when they fear it. But the trees don't forget it. The breeze blow the message. The rivers and seas hold the image." Damn. I fucking love those lyrics. That's so good. It's so good. And that whole album, great lyrics. That whole song, great lyrics. He also has some amazing storytelling on the song Cadillac, where he tells the story of his father-in-law and another black man. They're essentially sitting in their car while their wives are shopping, and they end up getting pulled out of their car by the police rather brutally and harshly. And to find out that you find out at the end that they were answering a call about two black men sitting in a Cadillac, and someone said they looked suspicious and they were holding guns to rob a bank and like fabricated some story or stereotyped them, it seems like. And unfortunately, this is a pretty common occurrence in this community. But the imagery he paints through his lyrics like really puts you in the scene. And it's really incredible how conceptual he can get on songs like this. Kind of how Kendrick does it. I would say similar to the kind of storytelling that Kendrick will put you in a scene. And I'll also say great features from other lyrical masters on this. Rock Marciano, ASAP Rock, Quelle Chris, who I love. Jazzy beats from production. Yeah, this is an amazing hip-hop album. This is really good. And he actually has another one coming out this year, so I'm stoked for that. And I'll probably talk about it. Brother Ali. This one's called Love and Service. All right, going a little long, but I want to give you a couple stand-up comedy specials real quick. I'm not going to talk too much about them, but Ari Shaffir dropped a great one on Netflix called America's Sweetheart. I loved his last special. Honestly, one of the best comedy specials of all time, in my opinion, is Jew by Ari Shaffir. It came out last year. It's on YouTube. I'm going to drop a link to that as well. And it's so cool because it sticks with the concept of religion and scripture throughout the whole thing, mostly regarding the Jewish faith, of course. But he essentially paraphrases stories from the Bible in such a hilarious way. So check out that last one, Jew. That one's hilarious. But this new special also is pretty conceptual. He has the concept of finding positives in things, like even finding the positives in school shootings and the Holocaust. So it gets a little dark, but not the whole part of it. But yeah, great stand-up special. I love Ari Shaffir. He had me cracking up the whole time with this one. And of course, the stage setup is gorgeous and intricate like his last as well. So yeah, America's Sweetheart, Ari Shaffir. Another great one, Roy Wood Jr. came out with one on Hulu that is called Lonely Flowers. And I know Roy Wood Jr. from The Daily Show with Jon Stewart and Trevor Noah. He was one of like the correspondents or whatever, and he's hilarious. This is actually the first time I've seen a stand-up special from him, and he nailed it, killed it. So funny. A lot of it's about customer service not being what it used to be, and people's interactions with each other not being what it used to be. Like, we're not as good socially anymore. Specifically in customer service, he talks about that quite a bit, and funny stuff that happens when you go to stores, just funny occurrences. And yeah, people just not connecting in real life because they're on the internet or their phones instead. And so that's a big part of the concept of this one. And he was hilarious, absolutely hilarious. So that's Lonely Flowers by Roy Wood Jr. Just wanted to give you a couple stand-up ones at the end there. I actually have a bunch of stand-ups I want to talk about. I might just have to do an episode of just talking about stand-up for a while, but I try to get to the music and analyze that a little bit more because the stand-up speaks for itself. So I just kind of list them. So, all right, that was episode 8. I went a little longer than I anticipated, but thanks for sticking around with me if you did. Much love to y'all. I'm not sure what the next episode will be like. I think it's going to be a little different than this one. It's going to have a topic or something. So, but thanks y'all for listening, and have a great one.